Hey everybody, this is Jon Croft with Culture Warfare with Jon Croft, and I'm Jon Croft. How's everybody doing tonight? How you doing, Rebecca?
Hi, Jon Croft. How are you?
Doing great. The weather's starting to cool down. It's October. It's
Yeah, we
pretty
went
great.
to the pumpkin patch today.
That's right. You got us a pumpkin, didn't you?
Yes, the city pumpkin patch. And all the cool vloggers were out looking fabulous, taking lots of pictures and video of themselves in front of pumpkins.
Did you say the cool loggers? What do you mean?
The cool vloggers and
Oh,
the
the cool
Instagrammers.
vloggers, like take pictures of their dinner and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a big thing. Pumpkin patches, you gotta go in matching outfits. And you got to get the photos at the pumpkin patch.
The yearly nostalgia.
It's a
I
very
thought it
big
would be
deal.
called the pumpkin spice vloggers or something, right? Well, it's nostalgic, I guess. I guess it's a bit of nostalgia. And didn't you make us some hot cocoa tonight?
Yes. Yes, it's cacao again.
Cacao
The funny way to say hot cocoa and cinnamon and vanilla.
and no sugar, just stevia, right? Stevia. It's actually pretty good.
It actually is.
We could just sit here and drink hot cocoa. And speaking of nice warm fuzzies, I was watching The Daily Wire last night with their new show and Friendly Fire, and they did release the trailer finally to Pendragon Cycle.
Finally.
Oh, wow, everybody. Took 2 years. They did it. They got this series going out there. I don't know how long it's going to last. Enjoy it while you got it. And so we're going to play it. You want to play it?
Okay.
All right, let's see if we can play it. Here we go.
This land is in a welter of confusion. There are more kings than sheep, more princes than crows on the battlefield. All seeking to snatch what they can, when they can, without a care for who suffers. Until this island is ruled by one who wields both justice and mercy, there will be no peace.
Look at them. Boys playing the game of kings. They say they have the Merlin with them. The Merlin died long before you and I were born. I've seen what you can do. This is where it begins.
Well, what'd you think there, Rebecca?
Um, it looks really good. Lots of beards, lots of nice
Lots of
beards.
beards.
Um, like a lot of cleavage. Okay. I don't really know like much of the storyline except that Merlin is involved. So, and the
Yeah.
bull leaping was really cool. The shot of the bull leaping was pretty amazing.
Well, I read the first book. I read
Okay.
part of the second book. I have not read the Merlin book yet, the whole Merlin book. So, I'll be reading that before this comes out, hopefully. Um, I think the shots with Caris or Carice, some people might call her Carice, but I think it's pronounced Caris. When you mentioned cleavage, uh, I think she kind of represents the Atlantean culture. She
Okay.
comes from Atlantis, and I think that that's kind of like um, a symbol for old Rome or old pagan cultures.
Okay.
So it is a little more decadent, right? It kind of makes you think of maybe old Greece, the Iliad and the Odyssey, these kinds of pagan cultures. It's a lot more sun-drenched, right? And I guess people are more scantily clad, right? So there is a reason for that. And also she represents a change in ideology. When you read the books, you'll see that she comes from a society or culture or religion, and then that's very different from what she ends up with. So if you're a Christian, you're going to kind of vibe with this pretty well. But the idea is that it follows her transformation to a Christian and also the transformation of Christianity in Britain, Britannia, you know, Britannia to a Christian nation. And some of that follows Arthur, right? Legend from a legendary perspective, turning their nation into a Christian nation. Obviously, Rome, right, was Christian before it fell. So there were Christians there from the beginning, before Britannia was really kind of a thing, an independent nation, right? So, and it was many small nations before this. And of course, Vikings mixed in there, Normans mixed in there, a lot of stuff end up getting mixed in there. I mean, I kind of see England as the continuation of the multicultural project that came from Rome, which the world is very rarely a multicultural society. But Rome was very stratified, very multicultural, and this is due to its system of government, and some other factors, but cultural factors, religious factors. But then England kind of borrowed from that, and I think it's what made England an empire later because they were far more capable of having a multicultural society, and uniting on some common principles. Go ahead.
What did you like about the trailer?
Thank you for getting me off my high horse. You just like pushed me right off of that soapbox. That was delightful. Thank you. Because as soon as you said that, I was like, why have I been talking this other thing? Yeah, thank you, honey, for bringing us back to Sandy. I liked the trailer. I do. I think that it has some special things about it. I like the way they treated Merlin in it. Um, but I'm not seeing a lot that's unique from a lot of other Hollywood fantasy series like this.
Hmm.
I don't see a lot that's aesthetically unique. And so all you're really getting in a trailer is aesthetics. Like if you watch trailers, that's just what you're just going to get a bunch of aesthetics thrown at you. Like, what kind of story is most aesthetic to you? Like, what kind of visuals are most aesthetic to you? What kind of sound do you like? So much of, I mean, trailers are a piece of art, right? And so, um, the aesthetic is what you're really getting across to the viewer when you put out a trailer. I did like the trailer. I bet the show is going to be pretty decent. probably because I've seen other trailers of this kind, fantasy trailers, the kind of the you mentioned the cleavage, right? Like I just hardly notice it now because there's so much of this that kind of thing in Hollywood trailers like this.
Hmm.
I guess that it's DW. It's a little surprising maybe. And
Yeah.
I have to admit from the beginning that kind of turned me off. I was like, okay, guys, like this is not actually very conservative. But I mean, these guys came from LA. You know what I mean? Like Jeremy Boring, Ben Shapiro, a lot of these guys came from LA. I think that they kind of feel like they brought with them an LA sensibility, which is was going to give the company a lot of weight and merit to it. And I mean, I personally think that was a mistake. I don't think we want to bring Hollywood with us as conservatives. One good thing is that it helped them to know a lot about the business.
Hmm.
So they at least knew how to do a lot of these things. They had friends in LA. They probably helped them a lot with, doing film releases and some marketing and a lot of other things like this. Getting to know production people, Dallas Sanier, probably if they had never done that, they would probably never have been able to get Dallas Sanier. These kind of contacts are really important. They're really necessary in the film business. So, but nevertheless, right, I think that what DW needs to do is reach out and find other film people, actually, new film artists, new film directors, and kind of be willing to stretch out with your aesthetic. I think the aesthetic feels too Hollywood to me. You need some young blood, an independent eye, to really, and also I like Ryan Whitaker. I like um, Travis Mills. I like a lot of the guys that they do have working for them. Travis has more of an independent eye, I think, but Whitaker feels also very kind of Hollywood, just very safe with his visuals. There's nothing wrong with that. He doesn't have a bad eye, but it's again the same kind of Hollywood aesthetic that's just perfectly framed. The lighting is not too dramatic. It's kind of flat lighting, you know, colorful. It's very colorful. And I think a lot of those choices are really actually really important to help you to stand out from Hollywood. Your visual aesthetic is kind of really important. And a lot of people, I think they underplay it, especially on the conservative Christian side of the aisle. It's like we, it's like hard enough just for us to make a film. We're like, don't worry about it at this point. And I can relate to that. You know what I mean? Just getting a film made. I've tried 3, 4 times to get a feature film made of my own, and it's very difficult. Like I don't have one still to this day. First of all, it's very expensive. Second of all, it's just very difficult. All the people you have to contact and get along with and get on the same page with, it's a lot. I'm not actually great with people personally. I can rub people the wrong way. My vision is often very obscure and strange. Like I learned from people like David Lynch. Like I learned from people like Nicholas Winding Refn. Like I learned from people that have often a very unique visual style. And when you try to communicate that, it often just doesn't come across, you know. So I can understand the uphill battle Daily Wire has, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I really liked, I agree with you. I really liked the stuff that they did with Merlin. That was pretty cool. That was exciting. I couldn't exactly tell which actor was supposed to be Merlin. Um, but that's okay. Like I still would like to watch it. Like I want to watch it. That's the purpose of a trailer is to make you want to watch it. And so it succeeded.
Yeah, Merlin has the weird eyes,
Okay.
and he did the sword thing like this, and then everybody fell over. He's got black hair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and then he's supposed to fall in love. Merlin's supposed to fall in love with the character that Brett Cooper was playing.
Okay.
Remember Brett Cooper? Did you see her in the trailer?
Yeah, I saw
You
her in
watch
there
it?
like once.
Yeah, it's like one really good shot, like kind of like a introduction shot to her. So if, anybody out there, if you are not familiar with this property, Daily Wire has been putting out, they put out like 2 years ago, up to about a year ago, they were putting out what they called production diaries, and you can find them on YouTube. And they have a good, I don't know, 12 of them, something like that. They have a good number of them, and they are about like 10 minutes each, 5 to 10 minutes each. And they're really good quality work. They give you a lot of heads up on what's coming for the series. So if you don't know what's coming, like after seeing this trailer and this kind of confuses you, watch those production diaries. It'll really give you a heads up because there's also a few ladies in it, right? We mentioned Brett Cooper, there's the girl that plays Karis, and then there's another girl who plays a villain, actually. And she was the one who was kind of sitting like prominently in that chair, and she had like I think a green dress on,
Hmm.
and she looked kind of menacing. Well, she's a
Hmm.
villain. I also do a few articles on these production diaries on Media Moses, so you can look those up as well.
Nice.
I give some really I think some insightful clues on the story and on Daily Wire in those articles. So we'll talk more about that in the future, but because this show is coming on January 2026, I think it's January 22nd. There was a tweet given. Here it is. This is Daily Wire's official tweet. The wait is almost over. The Pendragon cycle premieres exclusively on Daily Wire January 22nd, 2026. All access members watch episodes 1 and 2 first, Christmas Day, 2025. The legend begins. So there's that. Jeremy Boring says, as a teenager, Stephen Lawhead's Pendragon cycle reshaped my understanding of faith, courage, and purpose. It rejected the shallow, nice Christianity of my youth and revealed a kind of Christian whose faith was forged in blood and sacrifice. A
Wow.
world where the battle for king and country was inseparable from the battle for Christ and his kingdom. That story changed me, and I've spent years bringing it to life for the screen. This is the Pendragon Cycle Rise of the Merlin, a new scripted series from Real Daily Wire and Bonfire Legend, adapted from Lawhead's extraordinary novels. The cast and crew bled to make it. It is without exception the largest and most ambitious production ever undertaken by a conservative new media company. It is also the most masculine, muscular work of Christian art since Braveheart. And it begins with a sword. So, oh yeah, this is the composer who mentioned composing music for it on Twitter, Kyle McCulston. By the way, I found out that Kangman Lee was commenting on this. Kangman is an actor who's worked for Daily Wire before. He's a pretty cool Korean actor, and I think he comments somewhere else. I'm going to have to share that. Oh yeah, this is somebody somebody posts the craziest Daily Wire troll move would be to recast Reagan in Brett's scenes in the upcoming Pendragon cycle. Great job, Reagan. You've endured a lot this past year and you did it with class. Keep speaking the truth.
Hmm.
Oh, it's a joke about how they replaced Brett Cooper with Reagan. And like
Hmm.
Ben Shapiro says, Pendragon Cycle is the most ambitious independent conservative media series of all time. So again, they're emphasizing how ambitious it is, which I didn't mention this, but we need to talk about the address that um, Jeremy Boring gave. So he gave an address at this is the end of Friendly Fire. We're an hour and 18 in to this hour and a half long show with these four hosts. And they've already talked about all this politics. They've already had Isabel Brown come by. And then they finally say, we have ambitious plans for the future, and we finally have an address by Jeremy Boring. So I'm going to play it right now for you guys. And then after that address, he drops the trailer. So we've already seen the trailer, but we'll talk about it more.
Thanks, fellas, and congratulations on 10 incredible years. You know, it's humbling to see the little company that started in your garage grow into the dominant conservative new media organization in the country and to deploy more than $1 billion in the fight for our nation and our culture. It's a lot for 10 years. From the biggest and most important political podcast of the last decade, The Ben Shapiro Show, to the biggest and most important documentaries of the last decade, Am I Racist and What is a Woman? From the depth and beauty of Jordan Peterson's Exodus series to the wit and wisdom of Andrew Klavan, to whatever it is that Michael Knowles does. It's been the honor of a lifetime to be in this fight with you guys and with the hundreds of employees who've given their best to our cause. It wasn't always easy. From partnering with Dallas Sonye on movies like Run, Hide, Fight, to launching a chocolate company in a single day, to creating our own children's entertainment platform, we've never been afraid to take big risks. We've punched way above our weight. Hearts have been changed, laws have been changed, children's lives and bodies have been saved, elections have been won. We've even gotten to help people on their journey to find God and restore their marriages, improve their lives. It's been quite a privilege. But I always come back to the audience. You guys listen to the shows. You watch the videos. You share the memes. You buy the razors and the cigars. You support our advertisers. You subscribe. You've been the real change makers these last 10 years. Thank you. There's more to say, of course, and more people to thank, but a company can't run on nostalgia alone. The Daily Wire has always been about fighting the left and building the future. So tonight, I want to give you a glimpse of what's next. It's the culmination of years of effort to build culture, not just to criticize it. It's the biggest, most ambitious project in the company's history. And it's finally coming to Daily Wire Plus this January. Please enjoy the world premiere of the first trailer for the Pendragon cycle, Rise of the Merlin.
So there it is. That was his address after, I think, about 6 months of absentee creative working in the back scenes. You remember editing a feature film, don't you, honey?
Mm-hmm.
It took us about 6 months, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was your little assistant. My title was post-production manager,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think I managed much, but you did a lot of hard work, and you were working 24/7 pretty much. But you were one person, and you were hardly being paid anything. And I think Jeremy Boring has a lot more people working with him. I'm just gonna guess that he's not editing this series all by himself in a closet somewhere. Um, in fact, we should probably go on IMDb and take a look who his editor is. I don't even know. I haven't even really looked for this. Um, Let me see. At least I haven't looked at this in a while. It was probably a few months ago I looked at their IMDb.
Are you wondering what took so long?
No, I'm not wondering why it took so long. I mean, I do wonder why it took so long, but mostly my concern is not why it took so long. It probably had effects and other things. My concern is why Jeremy Boring has not communicated. Look at this. Editors, Jared Bentley, edited by Daniel Hajnal, lead editor. So it looks like these two guys, at least in the minimum, like these are the only guys that have been credited so far as editors. It makes a big difference to have an assistant editor. If you're editing by yourself, it's not any fun. So these are all the people on this production. Look at all those producers, composer, cinematographers, editors. Yeah, those are the only two that are credited. But my point is that anybody can go on IMDb and look this up. So we know that Jeremy Boring is not editing this and we know he's not editing it by himself, if he is editing some of it, what you'll often see is an editing couch in an editing suite, and the director comes in every now and then and sits on the couch and goes, "What's going on there?" And he's watching the editor kind of scrub through the work they've got so far and making comments and making notes. And then maybe the editor will provide a rough draft and send it in the email or something to the director, or they'll share remotely with each other, and they'll be able to see the kind of quality, like how this editor is putting together this rough draft. And this is not something that a director's doing full time or a showrunner is doing full time. This is something that they can kind of juggle with other projects. I've known directors who will write scripts while they're editing because it gets their mind off of the edit for a while. Because if you get too close to an edit, it can get very mentally difficult for you. You can kind of lose perspective, if you're in it too much. So, Jeremy Boring doing this for 6 months, I think just people don't know how films are made quite often. So they don't know that, when you're in the line of fire and you're in the middle of a battle in film, you actually need to stop and take breaks. You really need to. And it's good for you to do that. And so you need to force yourself to take weekends. You need to force yourself to take breaks. You need to force yourself to be social every now and then and go and have a beer with somebody and just not talk or think about this production for a little while. And if you don't do that, your brain will get fried. Like, that's just kind of how film works. It's very intense artistry for a while, and then you have to stop. You have to force yourself to stop. You have to force yourself to stop working on it and take a pause, take a break. It's like a mental health break. And if you don't do that, you will start to get really frazzled and frustrated. So, I think that Jeremy Boring knows enough about this by now. He's made quite a few pictures by now as a producer. And producers often have even less involvement in post. They're thinking more about the distribution plan by that time. And Jeremy Boring doesn't have to think about a distribution plan because this is only going to go up on streaming. This is not going to be in theaters, in my view. And by the way, people have speculated that, and I've even recommended that at points, at certain points. But I mentioned Kangman Lee before. He actually has a post on X about this. I can share that really quick. He comments on the trailer and says, "This looks really good." This is Kangman Lee, who is an actor who has worked for the Daily Wire. He was in the movie Lady Ballers. He says, "This looks really good. Unfortunately, with the falling out Daily Wire had with Brett Cooper, PR messes, canceled projects, Snow White, Gina Carano, Bentkey, and production delays, I'm not sure Pendragon Cycle will do well. Much of the hype surrounding DW Entertainment has died." And I kind of have to agree. He embellishes more and says, "It's been 2 years since Pendragon Cycle was announced, and so much has happened since then. The culture has shifted tremendously, where DW has always been at the center of cultural conversations and political discourse, but not so much anymore. I sincerely hope it does well. We're desperately in need of good art that is timeless and enjoyable. Whether it be from Angel, DW, or even Hollywood itself, I will always champion good stories." I think he has insight here, and I kind of agree with his take. Hollywood as a marketing machine, and it is a marketing machine. It is what Hollywood does most often it is their biggest business is marketing, and primarily to monopolize distribution, theatrical specifically, but also to monopolize streaming. Um, and Netflix being the only profitable streamer, it has ended up, of course, being that the tech companies like Netflix have a bit of a stranglehold on the film companies as a result, and the film business. Um, but I actually comment on this and I say agree, that is, agree with Kangman Lee. I'm concerned that their culture efforts are too weak to make a difference. I'm glad they have their new office in DC and are doing well in 24/7 news gathering, but we need another culture building conservative film studio. Any ideas, Kangman? I know you love acting. Do you have ideas? What I like to do is engage people who I think might have some insight or might have some fire behind them, some interest in getting things done, and starting conversation with people online about this kind of thing is really important. So Kangman has some insight here. Like I said, Hollywood's primary business is marketing. So they understand how marketing works. Conservatives are not really in that business, right? They don't own Hollywood. They're not really part of Hollywood. They tend to be craftsmen sometimes, but they don't tend to be the power players in Hollywood. How theatrical marketing works is, first of all, it's very risky. It's not a sure bet. You have to do a lot of market research before you even decide you're going to give a theatrical release to a picture. It has to be the kind of thing that attracts your demographic very surely. So you can track it really well. You know it's attracting your demographic. Um, and one good thing about Hollywood, though, is that they have people that have been in this business for so long. A lot of producers and writers and directors, specifically producers and writers, right? Because writers originate projects, and so writers will know what kind of script will attract what kind of demographic. This is kind of what genre filmmaking is. And so a good genre scriptwriter will know how to attract that audience. But this is all very formulaic in Hollywood. Hollywood has a lot of formulas, but that's for a reason, right? And the reason is that they know that if you're following this formula, you at least have a good chance to make it in theatrical, because when you do make it in theatrical, you tend to do pretty well, right, in Hollywood. And it means a lot. It adds to their marketing strength in Hollywood. Even if you don't make a lot of money in theatrical, it really adds to their continued market research. It adds to the strength of their face actors, and it reminds people who they are. But you never want to oversaturate with one actor or with one kind of story or one kind of genre. You want to keep it nice and balanced, right? And Hollywood just does this so well, we don't even notice it. Although in recent years, they have become too ideological with their storytelling, but they still have good marketing people, right? So they can market this thing that's a bad story still pretty decently well. And then when they do well, because it was marketed well, they will say, see, our stories are fine. Like, we do a good job. Like, this is a great kind of story. And these is two different things, right? It's really the marketing half the time that allows a film to do well, not necessarily the story or the actor. Actors don't tend to drive pictures like that anymore. But it's not like that factor doesn't exist, right? Certain actors are known for certain things, and they will play well in that marketplace, but they won't necessarily drive a whole picture into success. There are going to be a few people who are very enthusiastic about certain um, actors and certain kinds of genre. But, you know, my point in all this is to say that Daily Wire is jumping into a whole pool of sharks. And these sharks kind of know their business, and Daily Wire doesn't really know this business. I mean, it kind of is, I think they're very familiar with it, but this is just not enough because you're also competing in the same marketplace with these guys. Now, we are lucky to see that another Hollywood studio, Paramount Pictures, is starting to get into more conservative fare.
Mhm.
Their new CEO, David Ellison, appears to be conservative friendly.
Mhm.
And so this is good news, right? But it's not necessarily good news for people like Daily Wire. David Ellison, and I mentioned this last week, right, with Canon Plus and Canon Press, that people like David Ellison and people like Paramount Pictures, you might be new media, as Jeremy Boring calls it,
Mhm.
and Ben Shapiro has called it that as well. They are new conservative media, right? That's what they call the Daily Wire. New media has uh, an uphill battle with traditional media like theatrical films in Hollywood. This is just a difficult uphill battle. And thank goodness some people like Angel Studios are doing well actually in that battle, even though they are also new media, right? You might call them new media. But what's new about Angel is the crowdfunding platform, but that's besides the point. Angel is a newer company, and I think that the reason that they are doing well is because they understand marketing more. I think that's the difference for Angel Studios. They just understand marketing more. They're engaged with their fans through the internet um, quite effectively as well. And that's the nature of crowdfunds, right? Is you kind of have to do that. But when you're dealing with theatrical, though, it really is being thrown into a pool of sharks. And even though these sharks have become weaker and more emaciated, right? Like Disney putting out a blockbuster these days, you don't expect it to do well. It doesn't mean that you're going to survive in that pool of sharks, even though these sharks are a little older and thinner. You're still being thrown into a pool of sharks and don't expect it to be fun. So you need to kind of come out swinging and have a plan. At least Daily Wire did well with Am I Racist? But that's because it's a very niche film. It's a documentary film. It's um, already been done before with What is a Woman, and it did very well, right? So the audience was primed, which is this very niche conservative audience, was primed to see Am I Racist? In theaters even by that time. But that doesn't mean we're primed to see Daily Wire's Pendragon Cycle. And Hollywood has learned this very well, which is why they have genre filmmaking, right? Genre filmmaking allows them to have very complicated market demographics. And so it's not even within the demographic of fans, as in age level, it's within the genre demographic. So it's far more complicated thing that Hollywood can do when you're talking about theatrical um, marketing. And not having that data, right, and not having people currently working in Hollywood who are the experts on this, you're going to have a really hard time releasing something like this in theaters. Kangman Lee was saying that also that it's been 2 years, right? And I think it's more accurate to say it's been a year, but half of that year in 2025 was negatives, negative news, negative stuff. And and that's like you getting beat up um, on a boxing ring. So you're getting beat down in a boxing ring. You got to get out some hits and hit the enemy back. And Daily Wire has not done that for 6 months. I mean, they have barely no wins. I mean, they kind of treated the Donald Trump winning the election as like a win for them. But I don't think that's good optics to say that. Like no, most people aren't going to regard Donald Trump winning the election as a DW win. You know, I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm just saying it's not good optics to say that or think that. There's too much new conservative media now that can also claim a piece of that pie. And even though Jeremy Boring says that they're the dominant media, that could be a bad thing because they might be on the decline now. They might have peaked, because this is a niche marketplace, and they might have reached the saturation point for that market, and they might be in decline now. So, being the dominant media doesn't necessarily help them here. I think that it's better to say that they need to come back out swinging again and get some wins because they have to acknowledge that they've had 6 months of losses and a year of radio silence, like almost a year of radio silence. I mean, even backstage, before backstage stopped and Jeremy Boring kind of bowed out, they were barely ever doing backstage. And when they were doing it, it was like a live stream of the election or something. It wasn't really an authentic conversation in my view. Um, so what that does is it makes it to where people aren't engaged as much with Daily Wire and their conversations. They're not really engaged with the culture as much. These discussions are really important. And I think Daily Wire has kind of bowed out of the conversation, the cultural conversation. It's not enough to put out content every day about 24/7 news cycle stuff. If you're like Matt Walsh or somebody, that's actually not engaging the culture that much. You're just one of like a million people talking on X or on Facebook. Like that doesn't really matter that much. It does matter, like you're moving the needle a little bit, but it's nothing compared to like how Hollywood does this marketing. It's just not the same thing. Like they need to be putting out puff pieces, interviewing actors like every month, a different actor or a different angle, or bring out Ryan Whitaker, the director, and talk to him about making the film. Like they should be doing that kind of stuff. And they need to be also letting reviewers see the work before they even release the trailer. They should have had special viewings for conservative reviewers to review it and then give a little review of their thing. Like this is the kind of stuff Hollywood does all the time. It's all about the discussion around their storytelling and around their marketing plan and around their marketing heroes who are known as actors. Like these are their gladiators in the ring, making people excited, right, for what's coming. Daily Wire not engaging this way is really impactful. It really shows that they're kind of not involved really in the culture. And they kind of want to think that they are, but I think that Kangman Lee is right that you can't just bring that back. In other words, you can't build that same momentum up again um, by January. That's just not going to happen by January. Now, if you were going to release it 6 months from now and you spent the next 6 months getting attention, getting attention, getting attention, yeah, you probably could do something like that. Um, but from what I'm seeing is that a lot of the money and the capital spent making this great could all be lost because the public needs to know this is a big thing. They need to know it. If they don't know it, they're not going to show up, and you're not going to get new subscribers, and all that extra work is going to go for naught. A lot of people just don't know how crucial the marketing is to make these things work. I mean, people talk about the blockbuster model. They talk about Star Wars, which is kind of writing the book on the blockbuster model as it is currently. There's some tweaks since then that people have made, but there's a book here, by the way. I recommend this book to anybody who wants to study this. It's called Blockbusters by Anita Elbers, and this came out a few years ago, but it's still very relevant. This came out when the Marvel blockbusters were really doing well. So blockbusters weren't seen necessarily as a negative thing, but there were naysayers. And I think that this book really draws a good middle road and focuses on research. And that's really good for this kind of stuff. But this lets you know how blockbusters work and why they're the most powerful model of theatrical distribution ever conceived. But it's like a special tool, like a flamethrower. You just don't use it whenever you want to. You use it sparingly. You use it at the right time in the right way with the right story and the right people on board. And if you don't, you are wasting a ton of money. Like basically you're in a casino and you have to know a little bit of what you're doing before you lay down some money. If you don't really do that, like why are you laying down money? But if you do know a little bit about what you're doing, you have a much better chance of making a good amount of money making a blockbuster than being at the casino. You see my point? Like there is a science to it. It's not all chance. But it's a very specific science. It's basically big bets and big rewards. You have to bet a lot of money. You have to. But if you do it in the right way, kind of like the way Barbie did, right? Barbie was a heavily marketed movie. And what happened? It made a lot of money as a result. I have an article about this, and I say, is it because of Barbie or is it because of the marketing? The answer is it's the marketing. It's not because Barbie is super special. It was not that at all. They spent more money on the marketing than the film. And that's why the payout was so big. That's actually why the payout was so big. So it was heavily marketed, and it was the perfect film to market. Very glossy, very visual, very nostalgic. And they knew their demographic really well. So that's kind of what you have to do with this Pendragon Cycle series. First of all, it's a series. It's not a film. So it's not an easily encapsulated idea. It continues on. You have to really make it iconic, kind of like Game of Thrones did. You have to make this iconic thing. And that goes a lot into the visuals, but also into the characters. But I don't know if they've achieved that yet. This is just the first trailer. Nobody could have seen that Game of Thrones would have been such a phenomenon when it just started its first trailer release. That's not, you're not going to see that, right? But what you will see, and that was a different time back then, but I think what you will see is potential. And I think this does have potential. The problem is Daily Wire is the wrong platform. It's not that their product is bad. It's that Daily Wire is the wrong platform for this product. But sadly, right, Daily Wire has started another platform called Bentkey, and then they laid a bunch of people off. In other words, they seem to lack the conviction to continue with their investments. So if Daily Wire were to start another distribution platform, I think it would suffer from the same kind of issue that Bentkey suffered from. Probably an overextending, maybe a danger of going too big. And I think that some people, they just want to make blockbusters, but you just shouldn't do that. You need one blockbuster a year if you're a studio. Sure, have a blockbuster a year, not a series, a film. And you have to have a ton of built-in audience. A ton of built-in audience. Superheroes and Marvel films, that built-in audience is 50 years old, 60 years old. You know, conservatives, we have a ton of properties that could be built-in audience properties, but we just don't make them. We don't make Paradise Lost. We don't make Dante's Inferno. We don't make, I mean, we do have Bible stories every now and then, and then Christians complain about them. They're too artistic. They need to stop being so artistic. So we have a lot of stuff with just cutting us off at the knees, but that's just ourselves cutting us off. We can make great stuff if we know how to balance it. My concern is that Daily Wire has overextended itself. It started a fairly large series instead of making great films. And series are kind of different than films. They require long-term commitment and a crew that is just very committed to this story. So I really think that Daily Wire should have focused on film, continue focusing on films and getting more filmmakers like Travis Mills, Ryan Whitaker, and other filmmakers, and trying to get those things made on the side. Small $2.5 million pictures to build momentum. Get some wins in your court. Remember how I said that they are in a boxing ring and they just took 6 months of beating. You got to get some hits in. If you don't get some hits in, you're going to get all this momentum just heading you straight down to the bottom of that boxing ring. You're going to be hitting the tarmac and that's going to feel like you can never get up again. That's not going to feel good. So you got to get up and get a shot in and build up your momentum again. And if you don't do that, you're really in trouble. So Daily Wire needs some small shots to get in. They don't need a huge knockout shot like this. They need to get a bunch of small shots in. I mean, I'm proud of them. I'm glad they're doing it. I just think it's a bit unwieldy. And I think that Daily Wire is more suited to do news and politics. And they need to give some of the directing, producing, and entertainment to somebody else. Like give it to Dallas establish some good rules. Dallas does ultra violent content. And they do a little too much kind of feminist stuff. I think they need a modification of those rules. They need more masculine energy stuff, but not ultra violent stuff. They need sympathetic female characters, but not girl bosses. I think that they got their entertainment formulas a little off. And I think if they just establish some good rules for their entertainment, like they want these kinds of stories and something reasonable, then just get a bunch of filmmakers to make those things and establish those rules with those filmmakers. Say, we need these things. We will give you $5 million this year to do it. And if you do well, then you're still with us. and you'll be able to keep making pictures with us in the future. If not, then that's okay. Like, we wish you well. But let's do it this year, and then next year we'll see if we can continue this going forward. But like, they could do that with 5 different filmmakers and set up a new film every year down the pike, coming down the pike, and then get one series lined up for the next 3 years, like this one, right? But this is, I think it's just a little too early and too expensive. Um, of course, there's no point in me saying this now, right? They've already done it, but it's cost them 6 months of getting beat down, I think. What are your thoughts? I know you actually asked me a good question before and I kind of flubbed it, but if you have other questions like that, I really appreciate it.
Do you think that this is kind of a strongman like situation where Jeremy Boring is sort of started off carrying a lot of the projects and spearheading a lot of the projects, and um, maybe it was more than they could manage, and
More than
maybe
he could manage?
yeah, and maybe it was more
Yeah. I
like maybe a little bit more hype than they were able to follow through on.
I think that Jeremy has a long history with his coworkers and meaning Ben Shapiro and Caleb and I think that they were in this for the long haul and they were thinking, we're going to do this plan, we're going to make it happen, but they didn't adapt and change the plan later. They just kind of kept like shooting for the fences, like they kept like going as hard as they could. And I think that might have broken Jeremy a little bit. And I
Yeah,
think he probably went a little too far with the money. And I think generally what you do in this, what you want to do in this situation is feel it out, make sure your plan is good. Um, and you do that. I think you have to take a reassessment every 6 months or so, maybe every quarterly. Take a reassessment of your plan and be like, listen, I know our overarching goal, our our company mission's good, and that's going to be good. I wouldn't doubt that too much. But you do want to take a look at it. But then how you do that mission might have to change. Like, and I think that their entertainment efforts, while I know they have expressed deep desire to be part of conservative entertainment, I kind of feel like their plan wasn't that good. It feels like they just were like, I want to get this film made and that film made and that film made, and let's try to get other films. I think what they should have been doing is focusing on a company narrative with their entertainment choices. And I know like if you're a conservative entertainment company and you're licensing stuff, you don't always have a choice on what you're going to get, right? But I think that you actually do. And you can't give up on that story and on what you're really trying to tell the public. Like there's stuff for me, like for me that I know like I could do something else. I get a lot of ideas and I could change my whole plan. Give it a few months. I could just change my whole plan. But if I do that, right, all this old work goes to naught. And a lot of my old work is good. I just think that you have to understand that you are going to get new information and you have to adapt to that. And it feels like they just didn't do that. It feels like they just kept pressing forward and now they've committed too much money. That's just kind of what it feels like. Like they can't back off. You know, they got a whole they got the dog, they got the toy. Arrgh. They just, um and I understand like if you're stuck in a situation like that, but find a place, like maybe after this gets released, and be like, okay, we have to readjust our plan. And I would just have a very different plan. I know that I've mentioned kind of what I would do before, but I think it goes without saying that you can make films and TV shows for less money. And it's less about the gloss, the Hollywood gloss, and more about the storytelling. In my view, that's really what it's about. The kind of storytelling that I think conservatives want to see is probably literally more conservative than they're making. I really think it is. I think that they actually are trying to kind of ride this line that almost doesn't exist in Hollywood anymore. And it's like they're trying to resurrect this time from the late 90s or early 2000s when Hollywood was putting out some fairly decent entertaining action or comedy that was going for something. It was not politically correct, but it also wasn't politically controversial, right? It's like they're trying to bring a resurgence of some time like that that they considered to be conservative Hollywood. And it just never, I don't think it ever really existed. I mean, even in the 80s, when some of the greatest conservative stuff was out there, it was highly sexualized in the 80s. So there was almost always a weakness happening in Hollywood at any given time. Like in the 50s, it was like Bible blockbusters, like the Ten Commandments and The Robe and stuff like this. And those weren't perfect films either, you know? It feels like people just really don't know what conservative entertainment could be in the future. But you have to look at what conservative really means and not think about, oh, I just want to be non-offensive. It's not enough to not be offensive. You have to actually want an exploration of conservative values. And you want to reveal things to people that they've never seen before and tell conservative stories in ways people have never seen before. Like you really have to go into the future with conservative values. It's never happened before. Like I've
Sometimes,
mentioned stuff like Paradise Lost. I've mentioned stuff like Dante's Inferno. There's like 50 others. I mean, there's George MacDonald, there's C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy. I mean, there's things we could be doing that every Christian would go, yes, your demographic would be enormous. But you'd have to be very faithful to that storytelling. And so many people in Hollywood now just cannot do that. They're not capable of doing that. You need a new breed of filmmaker who really just cares about the story as it's meant to be, following a strict understanding of conservative values and Christian values. And so, like kind of like an art historian, somebody who is an artist, but they're also a historian who loves to read Homer and loves to read all these classics. And they don't just like to think about them, they like to understand them and what they're trying to tell us. And then they want to reveal that through art to the audience. That to me would be conservative storytelling. And I don't see anything like that. Pendragon does come close, right? Except Pendragon is a modern novel. And it does have interesting ideas. I really like it. And it's got great potential. I don't think Ayn Rand is that. I think Ayn Rand was the more 50s, 60s, kind of like reaction to Marxism, conservatism. It's not really conservatism, it's more like a reaction to Marxism. And I like it. I'm glad for it. It's been tried a few times, the Fountainhead, but we need something like rich conservative fudge. You know what I mean? Like something really like stronger than that.
Yeah, I like what you're saying because it feels like it's not enough to just be non-woke.
Right. Exactly.
It's got to have its own thing. And I saw, you read Jeremy Boring's description of the Pendragon cycle and how it made him feel about Christianity.
Yeah.
Um,
That is
if,
valuable, you know?
is that something that you got from it when you listened to Pendragon cycle?
I did, but I think he's speaking of the whole arc of those books. And I haven't read all the books yet. But you know
Okay.
what? I can feel the vibe already. And I think that that's why I say Pendragon has great potential. And I think it's the closest thing right now to what I'm speaking of. But really what you need, I think, is kind of like uh, if you know, like if you're in the homeschool world right now, which we are kind of into homeschooling right now, our kids. If you can imagine a homeschooled classical Christian artist who's coming out at a new time and they know Dante's Inferno inside and out, or one of these other epic tales like Beowulf or something, and they're so familiar with it and they geek out about it. These are the people that need to be the next film directors. They are somebody who's going to watch artistry like, they're going to watch a classic art film. Um, Tar they're going to watch something like Tarkovsky or Aronofsky, right? Or something like this. And they're going to be like, that's interesting. I enjoy that. Now I need to see this for Dante's Inferno. I want to see this kind of thing for Dante's Inferno. I don't want to see it with some new story that has no meaning and value to my life. I want to see this with a story that has value to Western civilization. And so you need a modern sensibility of artistry, a modern artist who can shoot a classic tale and get the heart and soul of it and the meaning embedded in that story. That's the kind of filmmaking we need right now. Really, I mean, Pendragon has a bit of that. And I think a lot of the reason it does is because it is borrowing from old stories. It is borrowing from like Homer and from C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. Like it is kind of borrowing from great literature. But that doesn't mean it itself is as epic, you know, and it doesn't mean it's going to be interpreted as epic. There was a recent tweet by some film reviewers who were saying this is the state of Hollywood right now, and it showed four different stills or pictures from fantasy shows, and they all looked almost identical, and they didn't look like very interesting. They were just kind of like cardboard, like they were kind of boring looking, kind of stale. And in other words, there was nothing artistic or interesting about them. The lighting wasn't interesting. It was very flat, kind of similar actually to how Pendragon looked. Um, and that's one of the reasons when I saw the trailer, I was just a little bit underwhelmed because I was like, okay, this looks like a lot of stuff we're seeing in Hollywood right now.
Hmm.
I'll be honest. I don't know. It feels like Jeremy Boring is just as much influenced by Hollywood as anybody else
Mm.
in Hollywood. And being influenced by your masters is one thing, but not having anything new to offer is another thing. And I don't mean anything new like, oh, nobody's ever done Pendragon Cycle before. I mean something new aesthetically. We need artists that have new things to offer aesthetically.
Hmm.
Um, we don't actually need new stories. We need
Mhm.
classic stories that have new aesthetics. And that's what I'm not seeing a lot of.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of new stories that are just kind of bombarding us with meaningless slop. And
Hmm.
if we're going to have a new story, do it up really big. If it's going to be impactful, do it up really big because you want to have an impact with that. It's kind of like what I was saying about Blockbusters, the book by Anita Elbers.
Hmm.
It's a high stakes game where you have to put a lot on the table in order to make a profit. But when you make a profit, you make a lot of profit. So it's like that. If you have a new story that's like Star Wars, right? Nobody knew Star Wars would be the hit it was, but someone like George Lucas was bold enough to put a new kind of story out there. It really was a new kind of story. The production design was mind-boggling. It was so different than anything you'd ever seen. And, that's a new aesthetic with an old story. It's the same kind of thing. That's an old kind of story, right? You can find it in the Hero with a Thousand Faces, right? Joseph Campbell. You can find these kinds of stories and myths. And he also was borrowing a little bit from the formula of Flash Gordon and stuff like that. But his aesthetic was brand new. It was like nothing we'd ever seen before. The sound design, brand new. I mean, there was stuff in there that was like nobody had ever seen before. And he also knew to have good actors, you know, Alec Guinness and people like this, actors who knew how to be in the moment like that. And they just sold the performances, you know. You got to have all these elements, but speaking of this particular formula, I think you really do need old stories with new aesthetics. And often we're just getting it backwards. We're getting old aesthetics and new stories. That's what Hollywood's generally delivering us. Old as in not risky aesthetics, stuff we've seen before, it's stuff that's current, right? It's currently hot in Hollywood, maybe, you know. Um, but hot in Hollywood, right? I mean, they're always trying to get hotter, right? So, and newer and fresher. And so, nobody knows anything in Hollywood, as they say. What's hot now is old somewhere else in Hollywood. They've already seen it. So you really do need a director with a fresh eye who has new ideas for as it comes to aesthetics. And then he loves old classic stories and the meanings behind them, the values, the conservative values embedded in them. If you can do that, man, I think that's going to be pretty cool.
I agree. It's got to be a new aesthetic and an old story.
It would work.
The old stories are the best.
I agree.
It's what all the other stories are based on.
Yeah, basically. And yes, I was also disappointed that Jeremy Boring did not say more than here's my trailer. And we've been doing great stuff for 10 years. Like, that's great. I'm glad that they did that, but for 10 years. But what is he doing now? I really need to know because in Hollywood, you always have to have another project. Always. So if somebody sees something that you've got and goes, wow, this is really great. Have any scripts? That's their next question because they want to know if they can line something up with you for the future. It's not just about what you already did. Like if you like this person and you want to work with them, you want a new script from them. You want a new ideas, next things coming up. That's what you want to find out. And I don't like Daily Wire is not good at that. What they tend to do is drop stuff on you after they've already done it.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? We already did this. Guess what? We already did that. And now we're just revealing it to you now. That is generally not how Hollywood works. They project out like 2 years and they go, we're going to be heading over there. And, you know, this is all about building audience and marketing, all that stuff. So, you know, it's one of the reasons I don't mind telling people what I'm doing far in advance because I learned that from Hollywood. I learned to not censor myself about what I'm planning for the future. Um, and of course I do that anyway, but Hollywood does it and it makes me happy that my skill set also kind of works with that. And, you know, and these projects do take a long time to create. So I think you do want to kind of project for the future and then work on multiple projects, you know. And then if one thing falls through, you have another one. And that's generally a good idea. I don't know. I'm I probably shouldn't be so down on it because I'm glad that they're doing it and I'm glad they finally released the trailer for it. But it feels like too little, too late, you know?
Mm.
I don't know. Am I being too negative?
Do you think that's what Kangman Lee was saying?
Yeah. I think he's saying too little, too late. And what he says is what I feel, which is that we need another conservative entertainment company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's never a good idea, and I've expressed this before. It's never a good idea to be the only conservative media company. That's just an absurdly bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
We should have a marketplace, and that means multiple competitors all competing with each other. You're going to have one of them is going to be like the Universal monsters. They're going to have great monster movies. Another one is going to be like great action movies. Another one's going to be like biblical epics. And they're all going to compete with each other and they're all going to like try to one up each other. That's a great thing, actually. You don't want to take it personally when there's another company across the street going, I'm going to outdo you. Like, don't take it personal. You would want the same thing if you were in their shoes. You'd want to be like, you know what? I'm going to beat that guy. And good, go for it. And so we can have a friendly competition. And you never know, maybe we'll be friends. Maybe we'll just sit down with over a beer one day and be like, you're really good with those monster movies, but I got you beat on these other movies.
Mm-hmm.
And you can both respect each other then. But we need a lot of conservatives like this who are willing to fight alongside each other and gently fight with each other, right? Not too tough with each other. It's like you're tussling, right, with them. You're a kid learning how to fight. You want to have some good friends learning alongside you, and you're hitting each other, but you're not hurting each other, right? You're learning how to fight each other without actually being malicious and hurting each other. So this is a good competition, and we need more of that. We need multiple Christian film studios. We need Wildwood Studios to happen. We need Lore TV to happen. We need Daily Wire to make more.
Mm-hmm.
We need Angel Studios to I think they need to make more male-driven content. That's personally me. It's because the faith-based genre is kind of a rut you can fall into. And I think they're like starting to kind of fall into that rut. And then they're not going to be able to get out once they're in there. They're going to have all these people telling them, "Oh, don't do that. That's offensive." That's the rut you fall into with faith-based. Is you start listening to the wrong feedback, which is kind of the old church ladies in the back going, that's offensive. I don't want to see that. And then you lose your artistic vitality. You lose kind of like what God is telling you personally, and you're starting to listen to look at the waves instead of looking at Jesus, right? Like Peter in the water, you're just going to start looking at the old church ladies and all the complaints and be like, and
Mhm.
start doubting yourself, second guessing your own talents as an artist, and maybe even disliking yourself for bothering someone or hurting someone or irritating someone. I mean, we have feelings too. We don't want to hurt people as artists. And so, but these kinds of jabs, while they're well intentioned, they can actually hurt and harm and then knock an artist off of their calling, you know? And an artist might have a future calling to do something very controversial. And if they start getting gun shy, they're going to start like missing and missing the shot and not focusing on the talent and the artistry they have to perform and get it out of the gate no matter what kind of grinding social reaction you're going to get in response. I think you kind of have to insulate yourself from that a little bit and be like, love you guys, this is what I made, enjoy, and then go make something else. And don't get yourself emotionally involved with all the like grinding emotional comments or whatever you're going to get. That's fine. Like let people process it, but they need to know that you're not just going to change your thing just because they don't like it. And that's the danger for Angel Studios right now is they could be in this rut of like kind of feminine faith-based content and not kind of break out of that. That could be a hard thing to break out of. Where see Daily Wire doesn't have that concern. They've already gone like violent and all this stuff, and they don't care what people say. They're going to make their thing. But the problem is, I think that they really need to focus in on what conservative content is really supposed to look like. It's not supposed to look just like Hollywood light. That's not good enough.
It'd be good if there was a revival of the classics, of people just reading the classics, talking about them, and then if that became more, mainstream, at least in the conservative mindset, then there would be more of a hunger to see those classics developed into projects,
Yeah, totally. Totally.
films or episodes or seasons. Yeah.
That really inspires me to say we are working on, remember, we've talked about Development Heaven,
Mm-hmm.
which is a kind of a Trithia film podcast project, you could call it. So my film company, Trithia Film, we have a Substack that is mostly sat unused, but what we plan to do is start a podcast over there. And what we plan to do with that podcast is to discuss stories like the ones you're talking about, and then discuss how to develop them into powerful films. And also literally work on our own projects to develop and talk about why we want to develop them this way, talk about why we're doing these stories and how we're going to do them, and kind of navigate real time with the audience the making of a conservative artistic project. And so we're hoping to kind of build a community over there where we can invite filmmakers on and talk about how to improve their project by entering into these development techniques, which has a lot to do with marketing and just good writing and good like original creative work. Like I look at development as a patchwork of ideas that it's like a puzzle, right? You're sitting in front of all these pieces and you're thinking, well, what goes first? And what looks like it fits, but doesn't really fit, right? Like I want it to fit, but it doesn't really fit. And there's a reason why. It's either because it's too expensive, it's unnecessary. It actually doesn't help you with your story and your branding and what you're trying to accomplish. Um, and then there's these weird decisions that you think that they don't work and they don't fit, but actually they're exactly what your story needs to be successful, which is something different, right? Something risky sometimes, something artistically like out there, and and yet tells the story, right? Sometimes tells the story much better than just something safe, you know. And I find too that artists often and filmmakers are quite often this way, because you'll have an actor's director, or you'll have a cinematographer director, like a visual director, or you'll have like a writer's director, a writer director. And these kinds of directors, often they're good at one thing, but they're not good at other kinds of directing, right? Um, and so what you need in the development process is someone like a producer to come alongside you and be like, have you thought of this? Have you thought about the visuals yet? What kind of visuals are going to make this scene pop? Because you're going to need a visual right here to make this scene pop, because this at this point in your story, you need to kind of get the attention of the audience. Maybe it's a slow, methodic scene. Maybe it's different than you imagined. There's a reason you want to talk about all these things, right? And there's a reason you need a second pair of eyes kind of helping you with that development process. Um, so, this is one thing that I don't see people talking about. Like, I just don't see them talking about this kind of stuff. And if they do, they keep it close to the vest. They don't put it out in public, and nobody learns about it. Or they see it on their social media. Like if they follow some actor or something on social media, they'll see them mention something, or maybe they'll drop some bit of information on a podcast. But it's very random. It's not necessarily helpful. You got to be like searching for this information to find it. But if you go to a podcast where this is all they do, right? Like it's like going on, like, remember cable when you would have like Turner, was it Turner that did like a lot of behind the scenes of classic movies,
Yeah.
and they would talk about how this movie got made.
Yeah.
And so either you'd watch back in the day when we were younger, you'd watch the commentary, listen to the commentary track, and you would do all the behind the scenes making of documentaries, or you would go like on one of those Turner shows and get a lot of like how this film got made, right? But
Yeah.
today, I mean, I don't know who does that. There's podcasts and stuff you can go to, but like, I don't know. I think that this is kind of like not a random bit of information. This is like meant to be specifically what you need to develop the right project, and how, maybe how to do it or why to do it. But I think also just kind of following a project get made when you're having these kinds of discussions, I think is probably going to be I think it will be helpful.
Yeah.
So we need more like conservative filmmakers in our chats.
Mm.
Um, and hopefully we'll at some point bring this over to Substack, where Trithia Film can be talking, which is me, by the way, can be talking with other filmmakers and with you maybe about some films and developing them, um, and how to do it and what we're going to do next and why. That'll be great.
That sounds great.
Yeah. But I have mixed feelings on this trailer. I think that they could have done better, but I'm not going to be like all negative about it. I think they did a great job. I think I'm proud of Jeremy Boring for doing it. I think they need to do better on their marketing. They really need to hype it up more and in the right way. And I mean, look, they dropped all these production diaries, right? Why did they do it so long ago? All of that stuff is not supposed to be dropped when you get it. It's supposed to be dropped reverse engineered from release date. So think 3 months before you release it. So do
Yeah.
you know when you're going to release it? If you're going to release it in January 2026, they should have been releasing these production diaries for 2 months now. Well, they could start now, right? But so they should have been releasing these production diaries now in November, in December, instead of releasing them last year. They lost all that momentum by releasing them early on. And now they're like just in their video library. Nobody cares. People probably don't even know that they're there after the trailer happens. Like that's all they have now is the trailer. And so there's going to be new people, new people that are new to Daily Wire, and they have no idea those production diaries even exist. They're just out there in the ether, and they have nothing to do with the marketing or with the release. And that's not the way you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to save all this stuff in your pocket and then pull it out at the right time. Bam, 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 bam. And now you're ready for release, right? Like that was lost. All that momentum is lost. Sonia, you should have told Jeremy that. Like, what is wrong with you? Come on. Because the producer knows this stuff. Producers are supposed to know this stuff and give advice in this way. And so, as you said, I think this is a strongman situation. I think Jeremy Boring has been the strongman, but he doesn't know everything. Just like all of us don't know everything. We need people behind us, helping us, giving us extra advice. There's probably plenty of like I know a lot about sure, I know a lot about film and distribution and marketing. Not a ton, but I have my perspective, right? But guess what? Give it a few years, all my information could be out of date. Like, so a lot of this stuff could change. I get the methodology, right? I get the theory behind it, but a lot of these techniques and methods and things could very well change. And I need a producer behind me as well. Um, and generally you have lots of producers on a production anyway. So, Jeremy needs the same thing. He needs people behind him supporting him. And companies like this really need to get more adept. If they're going to do something big and try to make it big, first of all, do shoot to trying to do theatrical if you can, you know. And I think Kingman Lee even mentioned that as well. Like, if you could do this theatrical, that'd be great. But then later he said, you probably lost a lot of momentum after 2 years. I don't think this is going to work. And I have to agree. Um, it's good to shoot for theatrical, but at a certain point, you've lost the momentum. You need to really like rethink your strategy and do better next time. Take note of the mistakes you made and do a better job next time. And streaming is overrated. I mean, in my view, it's overrated. But you've heard me say this before, so I I,
Yeah.
I do not envy people with streamers right now. I don't envy them. They've got a big uphill battle to climb because they're trying to chase after subscribers, and it's a never ending um, treadmill of hype. You know, at least the theatrical, you have seasons, you know, and you have genres, and you can release them differently, and you've got things to play with. You've got a variety of expensive versus not so expensive pictures, you know. Um, there's things you can play with, but streaming, it's all just the same thing. And it's happening all at the same time, 24/7. Just never ends. You can always feel like you can never win. Like it's just too easy to feel that way. It's like the doom scroll for entertainment. It's just like maybe not so healthy. I don't know.
Yeah.
And they don't tend to make money. So I feel bad for them. But there are better models out there. I'm telling you guys, I know some of this stuff. I don't mean to toot my horn. It's called release windows. Guys, it's not really that complicated. This was common knowledge about 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Release windows is where it's at. And it's like we've forgotten this secret code of Hollywood. And Hollywood knows it. Like David Ellison at Paramount Pictures I'm sure, is very well aware of release windows and how they work. He's not going to tell Netflix. Don't tell Netflix. Netflix is starting to kind of get it though. And they're starting to be like, maybe we should release something in theaters. Maybe. I'm like, are they going to do it? No, probably not. They probably won't do it. They're stuck with their old ways, trying to of being the next big thing after Hollywood. I doubt they're going to go with traditional models, but you never know. The money could be too lucrative. It could be too easy to abandon their old model and be like, yeah, but we're making millions of additional dollars now. And it's just because we were being sticks in the mud and didn't want to do theatrical for years. Okay. So this Pendragon trailer has been impressive. I did enjoy it. I want Daily Wire to find their footing again and come back to the fold of good entertainment and making entertainment and culture building again. So hopefully this is a sign of new things to come. I think there's this kind of deeper desire I think that we have too as conservatives fighting in the culture, that we want these companies to start maturing and doing what Hollywood does, but better
Yeah.
somehow, right? Finding this footing. I think Angel Studios is kind of a good leader in this direction. Is that there's some things that they have going on that are helping them to more regularly get wins. And I think Daily Wire could learn from some of that. And a lot of other conservative creators could learn from some of that. And I think Lore TV has a few good things happening for them as well. They need to get a hit. They need to get some hits in. And Daily Wire needs to come back again and get some hits in. And maybe if they can do those things, we can start getting some good maturing companies that are competing with each other in a healthy way and form an actual marketplace of conservative media and culture and entertainment. And then we can start teaching people again what conservatism is all about. Instead of conservatism dividing with each other because they don't even know what they believe. And people will be like, well, I'm a conservative, but they don't even know what that means. And so then when the rubber hits the road, they start conflicting with the fellow conservative. And that's because they don't understand really what conservatism really is. And so that's why culture involvement in the culture is so important, is that actually it does teach people, and it teaches a whole different kind of people more things. Because a lot of people, they're not even watching the news. They're not even watching YouTube. They just want to watch their movie or that show for that evening and move on. And if there was a conservative show they could be watching, they would, but there isn't. So they would be getting a lot of great stuff from the entertainment if we made it for them, and if it was really entertaining and it just had one little bit of information that they needed, or a little bit of confidence that they can debate safely in support of conservative values, or that they could stand by their principles and not feel socially weakened by the fact that they are not fully acquainted with conservative values. Like these little things matter. And yes, we do need a whole new breed, not only of artists, but also investors who are investing in these companies. And there's nothing wrong with them diversifying and being, like the Hollywood megalopolises we see, as long as they don't lose their values. That's what really matters. And I think that's going to be part of these companies maturing. If they hold tight to these values and they know how to define what good entertainment is, what good conservative entertainment really looks like, which is not the kind of stuff Daily Wire has been putting out, frankly. This could change that. Pendragon Cycle could change that if they really stick to that message and try to land the message, which I think is a pretty conservative message. Daily Wire could change the understanding that true conservative art does exist. And they might be the first people to make it in recent memory. But it does exist, right? And we just need to understand how to define conservative culture and conservative art well, and then produce it through art. We need to be able to do that. So then those competitive relationships are going to really, I think, start blooming, and the market can explode with conservative culture, which is really just Western civilization brought into modern lights. So we need to really keep our finger on the pulse and work on the culture. And if not, that's how the culture crumbles. Come on, guys, we don't want that. So where can people find you, Rebecca?
You can find me writing on Substack. I write almost daily on there, and I've released a few. Most of what I post is free, but I've released a few paid um, short story, fairy tales. Um,
Yes.
and what about you, John? Where can people find out more about you?
Isn't that story that you mentioned called The Lady in Her Tower? Is that what it's called?
Yes, I'm working on a story right now called The Girl in Her Tower, and it's being released every Friday. There's 3 installments so far, so
Beautiful.
been a lot of fun to work on it. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got some great fantasy stories. Really good stuff.
It's a lot of fun. Everything that I do is very like prayerful and very like from the flow.
Yep, yep, from the heart. Good stuff. Yeah, and you can find me also on X and on YouTube and MediaMoses.com. So enjoy it and give a salute to your local culture warrior who's making life worth living. And here's the salute. I'm going to hold it. Have a great weekend, guys.
Like, how crazy can I look?
Yeah.